Well, folks, today we are taking a look at our good friends CBS to see how they reacted on election night 2024. Buckle up.
One of the most powerful Democrats, that's her phrase, based on a source close to her watching the returns.
Bob, it's interesting. They say she must win, but do they think she can win? There's such a big difference there. You expect people to be optimistic at this point, but it's
come down to the turnout, Gail.
She's being a downer.
Cities and labor. Cities, labor, and they got to eat into the Republican vote in the suburbs. They're still optimistic, from Pelosi to others, that she can do it, but they see a narrowing path, but a still viable path. But there's a lot of Democrats, to be clear, on edge right now.
Yeah, so there's a lot of things that we can see with the data and our reporting, but it's strategists with close contacts that know about the ground game, like CBS News political contributor Joel Payne and political contributor Leslie Sanchez, want to bring you into that conversation. Joel, what are you hearing within Democratic Party ranks at this hour?
I'm hearing similar to the reporting that was just shared. Look, that path to 270 is narrow.
And I was just looking at my path to victory. There's some other very narrow ones, some pretty obscure options here, but we are left with a total of 5 paths.
He seems shook.
If the vice president were to lose Wisconsin and that blue wall was pierced, which was going to be her easiest way to victory. On that note, let's check in with CBS Morning's co-host, Tony DeCopel. He is at Trump headquarters in West Palm Beach.
Vibe is not good
here. Hi there,
here.
Tony.
Hey, good evening, Nora. While you all are characterizing the race there, I'll characterize the room in just 30 seconds. We've got 10:53. Time of dancing has begun here at Trump headquarters. YMCA came over the loudspeaker, and Trump seemed to be pulling ahead in Pennsylvania. Loud cheers in the room. Our colleague Olivia Rinaldi says they're now looking at the exit polls in Trump world, quote, gleefully. That's the word from Trump world.
I want to bring in CBS Morning's co-host, Gail King. And Gail, we've been here now for several hours, and we're getting a little bit of a sense of how the night is going.
Yeah, and it seems that if you're a Donald Trump supporter, you're feeling very confident and encouraged. And if you're a Kamala Harris supporter, you're feeling a little worried at this particular time. Although we keep saying still,
which side she's on.
Votes to be counted. People say they still are holding out hope.
Look at her.
Even though at this particular time
so
she seems to be
depressed.
underperforming in all the things that they thought she would do well. You know, a friend of mine called me from Florida this morning, clearly a red state, and said, you know, America is in labor today, and today we'll find out if we are delivering a boy or a girl. Right now, as you sit here tonight,
she said
it looks
to
very
you?
good for the Donald Trump team. And I think people are trying to figure out what is happening to Kamala Harris's campaign at this particular point, even though people still have hope.
Well, I think the vote is still being counted in Pennsylvania.
We need to keep emphasizing that.
Yes, and we
That's all she has
certainly don't
to
know
say.
what's
I think
happening
the
in
vote's still
Arizona or
being
Nevada
counted.
just
Wow,
yet,
thanks.
or
Look
Michigan,
at-
Wisconsin. So
She
the
is
early states,
so
Georgia
upset.
and North Carolina, because they were the first to close, we were able
she's the
to
best.
rate them as lean Republican. And so, you know, just as the hours go on and more votes come in, we'll have a better sense, I think, of what's happening there. But look,
you know what I think is troubling, though, Nora, is that she seems to be underperforming in areas that they thought she would do well. Certainly among women, certainly among the...
Gail, thank you. Want to bring in Robert Costa on that note. Robert?
Just briefly to add to what Scott McFarland was talking about in terms of a possible expanded House majority for Republicans, Speaker Mike Johnson just made remarks in Louisiana to his supporters. He believes he will enter next year as the Speaker of the House, should he win the gavel again, with more Republicans in the House. He also stated publicly that he believes there will be a Republican Senate and a Republican in the White House in Donald Trump. So you're looking potentially, and to Gail's point, it's early in the night. A lot of votes still need to be counted, but Republicans are already tonight at this hour getting confident about what could be a very ambitious policy agenda next year.
And it's not just Republican senators. These will be Republican senators, very different than the Republican senators who were there when Donald Trump won in 2016. Jeff Flake, John McCain, Mitt Romney, those three are all gone. And these are Republican senators who grow up out of and into the Trump politics. It'll be if Donald Trump wins, a different Washington, different Republican majority.
But there certainly will be some soul searching within the Democratic Party, whether President Biden stuck around too long. He didn't give the vice president enough time to present her case to the American people.
CBS's Nancy Cordes is at Vice President Kamala Harris's election night headquarters at Howard University in Washington, D.C. Nancy, how is the Harris campaign reacting to the numbers they're seeing across the country?
Howard University.
Good.
The crowd has been extremely muted. They are watching the results come in. They are talking to each other. There's no jubilation whatsoever. They want to learn more.
Nancy, is the campaign giving any further details about when they can stop stressing, essentially when they think this will be a done deal and called?
Yeah, when do they pull in the
They
plug?
might be lagging in so many of these battleground states. They had been arguing that they had a chance of sweeping them just 12 to 24 hours ago.
Nancy Cordes, thank you so much.
Yeah.
You're watching
Didn't get
CBS
one
News, America
swing state,
Decides.
did you?
What does this mean? John, is it a brand new party? Is it a brand new day? And we should also say nobody has 270 yet either.
Yeah.
So the Harris campaign is still nauseously optimistic. Nauseously optimistic, but I bet they're getting a little sicker now as the night progresses.
There is this realignment, to pick up on what John was saying, that we are watching play out in terms of who's turning up to vote. But we are looking at a globe that is realigned too. There is a disorientation. There is, from the commander-in-chief question, who is going to take office at a time when the world is watching this election tonight to see who they will be dealing with, when they're looking at the largest land war in Europe underway, when they're looking at the expansion of that. They're looking at a Mideast on fire. They're looking at an aggressive China. And we are going to be digesting this as a planet when we wake up tomorrow morning to figure out what's next. A third of the world has had a female leader. This country has not. And tonight, this is also a test of whether a woman could.
I think everyone would be totally fine with a female leader if we had a competent female leader, someone who's kind of a badass, right?
Would be a commander-in-chief of this country elected in a very short runway of an election against a man who has presented himself, despite what his national security advisors say, as about strength, as about he puts fear in other people. Therefore, you won't see that realignment or that threat around the world come to these shores. That's the package he's selling in his national security argument.
He's pretty good at it.
It's just something to chew on tonight as we wait to see who gets to 270. There are just some major tests that go, I think, beyond this moment when we talk about gender, when we talk about, projections of power and America's role in the world.
I know, but you look at the exit polls. Harris overwhelmingly wins when people say they want their president to have good judgment. Trump
the girl in the pink, I forget her name.
When you say you're looking for someone who could lead
the most
and who can
visibly
bring
upset.
much needed change.
It's wild.
I hear you talk about. All right, let's bring in Robert Costa on this matter. Robert?
Some new reporting from former President Trump's inner circle at Mar-a-Lago tonight. It is just past midnight on the East Coast. People close to Trump tell me just in the last few minutes that it is notable that he has not yet made a statement. He is holding back from making remarks tonight because there is a growing sense inside of Trump's inner circle at the highest ranks of the campaign that tonight is shaping up well for Trump. The vote is still being counted. But there was talk early on, as we discussed, former chief strategist Steve Bannon and others urging Trump to get out there and declare victory. He has not done that yet because there is a belief that he could win it within the next 6 to 12 hours outright. They're not betting that yet, but they're holding him back. And he's telling people behind the scenes he feels very good that Republicans are turning out. When I spoke to him just before we went to air,
people got out.
He said
they got
immigration, more than anything, is overwhelming this race.
I doubt it, too.
It is still early in the night with a number of votes to be counted. Let's go now to Major Garrett at the data desk because we have not projected 6 of those 7 battleground states. We want to know what we see as those votes are coming in. Major?
So, Nora and team, there are toss-up status for Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. That is a fact. We have not changed or altered our projections. But there are trends within the toss-up designation that we must look at and look at closely. I'm going to start in Wisconsin. I'm going to move across the so-called blue wall. Let's look at Wisconsin. I'm only going to show you one thing.
The so-called.
What Kamala Harris needs, the vice president needs to prevail in Wisconsin and capture its 10 electoral votes. You see that, 56%. What does our estimate reveal? 45%. That is a substantial gap.
Is there a possibility of a red mirage, as it has been called?
So we talked about that red mirage, blue wave effect a lot in 2020, and that's when the Republican votes come in earlier, the in-person election day votes that skewed heavily Republican, and the later votes of the mail ballots that skewed heavily Democratic in 2020.
Interesting how that works, right?
That has been compressed quite a bit. We're not seeing quite the red mirage, blue wave effect. I think we're seeing a little more geographic difference in when things are being reported. We're waiting on Philadelphia. We're waiting on Milwaukee. Whether that's enough to make up the deficit, Anthony and Major have demonstrated that really well. I think we're not going to see quite the same red mirage, blue wave effect that we saw in 2020.
Too big to rig.
All right, David, thank you. CBS News, America decides election 2024. All eyes on these 7 battleground states as our data desks analyzes the incoming vote. Let's take a look at where the presidential race stands at 12:30 a.m. in the East. Big number 270. That's the number of electoral votes needed to win. With the results so far, Donald Trump has 230 electoral votes and Kamala Harris with 189. Let's dig deeper into the battlegrounds in the blue wall states. CBS News rates the states of Michigan and Pennsylvania as toss-up, and then Wisconsin as lean Republican. Along the southern route of battleground states, CBS News characterizes Arizona and Nevada as toss-up.
North Carolina won. Georgia won.
Georgia, CBS News rates as lean Republican. And as we mentioned earlier, CBS News projects Donald Trump will win North Carolina. We have new reporting at this hour. Chief White House correspondent Nancy Cordes is at the Harris headquarters at Howard University in Washington, D.C. Nancy?
It's still depressing here. Yeah.
Nora, CBS News has learned that Vice President Kamala Harris is now very unlikely to travel here to Howard University from her home about 2.5 miles away to deliver any kind of address
She's not
to
supporters
gathered here. Things are
That's
still just
look.
too uncertain. The former president, Donald Trump, has not made any remarks. And
Maybe
so
Beyonce can come
we
to
are
the
being
talk,
told that it is unlikely she will come here to say anything either. The question becomes, if she doesn't come here to speak to the thousands of people who are still gathered here, yes, the crowd has thinned out somewhat, but there's still a lot of people here who think they're going to be hearing from her. The question becomes, does she have someone else come in her stead to basically address the crowd and explain to them that the vice president is not going to be here to speak herself, much in the same way that we saw John Podesta come out at the Javits Center in 2016 and let the crowd there know around 2:30 in the morning that Hillary Clinton was not going to be having anything to say.
Didn't work out
night.
too well.
The Harris campaign has made it pretty clear that they're putting all their eggs in the blue wall basket, and they're holding out hope for some kind of turnaround in those states.
So many top Democrats, I'm talking about people I really trust as sources on the Democratic side, are growing alarmed, frankly.
It took us 3,000.
Are growing alarmed, frankly, as they look at these numbers.
And what is in particular in the numbers that's alarming?
They're not seeing the kind of support they need to.
They're seeing more votes for Trump.
Working people in the Midwest, labor union members. I talked to Sean Fain, the head of the UAW, and other labor organizers. They were confident all night. But former President Trump, with his message on the economy and immigration, in the view of my Democratic sources, has been able to make gains with working people who are affiliated with unions or in a union by talking about the border again and again.
Mm-hmm. I think it's important now to go back to Anthony Salvanto and Major Garrett to look at where the outstanding vote is in these blue wall states and the additional battleground states. Major?
So, Nora, I told you in the audience a few moments ago that there were trends beneath the toss-up designation. Those trends have continued to play out in Wisconsin. That's why we have changed the rating to lean Trump.
Stand by. We have a CBS News projection for the battleground state of Georgia and its 16 electoral votes. We can project that that Donald Trump is the projected winner in the state of Georgia at this
Another swing
hour.
state.
Our first projected winner of the night, Georgia, for Donald Trump.
The first flip.
The first flip, as we know that Joe Biden won Georgia 4 years ago. That's significant.
Yeah, and I can give you a little taste of why that is if you look at the exit polls for Georgia. And we look at three groups here that Donald Trump performed well with. The first is independents. He won 54-43. That's an 11-point victory with independents. In 2020, Biden was the one who won independents. Voters age 65 and older. We told the story about how in the Midwest, the older voters are going for Kamala Harris over Donald Trump. Well, not in Georgia, 59-40. That's a 19-point victory with voters over age 65 in Georgia. And then finally, white non-college degree. Remember, that was always going to be a good group for Donald Trump. But Kamala Harris,
huge margin.
Gargantuan, 81-18. If Harris was going to have to do well anywhere, it was because she was going to have to live in the mid-30s in that number. That's a deep Trump stronghold, but you've got to at least be competitive with your opponent's stronghold, or at least eat into it. She was not.
Now, one thing about Georgia, though, it does not have the size of an electorate of white non-college degree that Michigan and Wisconsin do. Almost 50% of the electorate in those two states is white non-college degree.
But the reason she's having problems there is because it's a larger share of the electorate, and she's not doing well enough in that larger share. It was always a share that Donald Trump was going to get.
I love how they try and make this so complicated.
But she has to do well enough in that group and then do well in her groups, and she's just not doing well enough with white non-college, whether it's in Georgia or in the Midwest.
And
if you've gone to college or you
CBS data
haven't,
going
you are
back
just
to
a
September
completely different person.
Have forewarned us on this. If you look at the way economic concerns resonated, 8 in 10 voters at that time told CBS their income wasn't keeping up with inflation. At that time, 7 in 10 said housing in their area of Georgia was unaffordable. We saw repeatedly concerns about accessibility, affordability, and people often, when they're asked about the state of the economy, that's what they think of, is what am I paying at the grocery store? They're not necessarily thinking of the data points that we are delivering on the national news that say, hey, the jobless rate is pretty good. Inflation is coming down. Eggs and milk.
Oh, you hear that? What everything we're seeing, it doesn't, we're not seeing it correctly. We're overthinking it, or excuse me, we're underthinking it. We're underthinking it by everything being extremely more expensive. And all the other points that they make all the time on their network, we're just not seeing the big picture, right? Because they're telling you all the good stuff that they've done. That we're telling you that. So just look at that. Don't look at what you see in front of your eyes. No. You're not thinking about it correctly.
It's the lived experience of what you encounter. And that's something we saw in Georgia.
And already tonight, they're in trouble when they start blaming each other, and it's coming in already. One congressman saying there'll be plenty of time to do this blame, but if there's one thing we're not doing right, the Democratic Party is a working class voter problem. We must improve our numbers here to win. They understand as this continues to happen, and as the inevitable may happen in Wisconsin, as we're seeing already, that if they can't win over those voters, and they fail to capture them on the economy, then they have some real restructuring to do going forward.
But people blame the boss. I mean, the grocery inflation, 22%. We were on the back end of a pandemic that completely upended the supply chains and global economy.
What the political scientists will tell you is that also voters don't
give
you credit for the good things that are happening. The unemployment rate was lower in 6 of the 7 battleground states under Joe Biden than under Donald Trump, leaving aside COVID. Pre-COVID, Trump unemployment was higher in every battleground state but Nevada. But voters they don't give you credit for things that happen. They are concerned about the plenty of things that they legitimately feel about their own economic position.
Much to great frustration inside the Biden White House. Almost from day one, they would complain to you behind the scenes that they felt like they were never getting credit for the advancements in the economy that were happening even underneath him. They would scream from the rooftops, and he would do press conferences, or he would go to battleground states and talk about housing, and they felt like he never got the credit for it. There was nothing they could do to vocally challenge the microphone that Trump had on that point.
Or they just
Let's listen now to the Harris campaign co-chair, Cedric Richmond. He's about to address the crowd at Howard University.
This guy's all I hate in my life.
I want to say good evening to all of the Harris campaign, the campaign family. Thank you for all that you have done. So thank you. We believe in you. May God bless you. May God keep you. And go HU and go Harris. Thank you all.
What does that really mean? Ooh, awkward.
And there you have the co-chair of the Harris campaign saying it's okay, everybody can go home.
Don't look back.
We're not going to have a decision tonight, and the vice president is not coming out to address, but we'll speak to the crowd tomorrow.
That is not. Going to land in a comforting way with Harris supporters, I think. And Nancy said it. We've all been talking about it, how extremely reminiscent this feels to 2016 and the campaign manager, John Podesta coming out to those microphones. I was in that room addressing the crowd saying, you will hear from her, but you're not going to hear from her tonight. And then we ended up hearing from her the next day.
And also saying too, Cecilia, we still have hope. There's still a path. It's a big sense of, a big case of deja vu.
He didn't say we still have a path. No. He said their votes still being counted.
Yeah, he said the votes are still being.
Have a path.
But he said the votes are still being counted, and that leads you to believe that there still is hope. He didn't say, look, there's no chance. He said the votes are still being counted. So, there's
he
a
has
big
been
case
down
of
the
deja
whole
vu,
time.
I think, for many people tonight.
I think Gail was her name.
This is, though.
Gail knew. From the beginning, you could tell Gail knew that she ain't getting this.
To see these supporters at her alma mater at Howard University and many D.C. residents there in that neighborhood walking off of that campus right now, wondering when they will know the results of this election.
Everybody's out of there.
I know that as we watch the crowd disperse and wait for word from the Harris campaign about what is next, we enter this late morning period where votes are just still being counted. Welcome back to CBS News Election Night headquarters in New York. It is now 1 a.m. in the east, 10 p.m. in the west, and polls are now closed across all 50 states. Former President Donald Trump and Republicans are having a very good night. CBS News projects that Trump will win 2 key battleground states, Georgia and North Carolina. And in the race for control of Congress, CBS News rates the Senate as lean Republican.
Percent of that 68. So there's a 10 percentage point gap. That is problematic for the Harris campaign, and that, Nora, is putting it mildly. Look at our model.
Oop, she is looking
Here's that
nervous.
range, but it is getting narrower by the hour.
Look how
the range
depressed
for
she
Trump
just
is
got.
moving up, and that is positive direction for the former
Well,
president.
this is when we should go to Maurice Dubois at the Path to Victory and see if there's a path to victory for Kamala Harris.
Tell me, please. I mean, so there's still a path to victory,
Nora,
right?
Thank you so much. Well, this map right here will bring it home for you. This is our expected votes per state. The red ones for Donald Trump and the blue ones for Kamala Harris. Of course, 2 states that we are projecting to go into the Trump column, Georgia and North Carolina. And so now you see how the path for Donald Trump has widened significantly. All he has to do is take Pennsylvania, and it's game over. All he has to do is take Pennsylvania, and it's game over.
Their system won't allow it.
Welcome back to CBS News Election Night headquarters in New York. It is now 1:30 in the morning. And just in from the data desk, CBS News rates Pennsylvania as lean Trump.
That's not
Keystone
good.
State
Party's
there,
over.
leaning Trump, as we have just about 94% of the vote in. Doing well, Donald Trump doing very well in rural areas, and there's still some vote to be counted. This was the easiest path to victory for the vice president, Kamala Harris. Michigan still a toss-up at this hour, but those 2 other states that the vice president would need if she were going to take the blue wall strategy, Pennsylvania and Wisconsin, at this hour.
Like there's another strategy.
CBS News rates them as lean Republican. As we had mentioned, her path to victory has narrowed significantly. Here's the electoral vote tally at this hour. Trump with 246 and Kamala Harris with 194. And you can see there, Pennsylvania still in white, Michigan still in white, Wisconsin still
Just
in
call
white.
Pennsylvania. They're being ridiculous.
We're saying lean
Everybody's so
Republican for
happy at the
Pennsylvania.
Trump.
Meanwhile, Fox News, which is playing on the monitors here behind me, they have called that race for Donald Trump. And when that moment happened, it got loud in here. There was a roar. There was reverberations. The phones came out.
It would be really funny to be somebody on the left side like this guy here at the Trump headquarters during this whole thing. That'd be pretty odd. Yeah.
And the expectation is that the phones are going to stay out because our understanding from the poll report is the former president and possibly now next president is on his way to this location. He is expected to speak. We've seen some evidence of that planning going on behind me. Just saying simply, Democratic heads are exploding all over America. Democratic heads are exploding all over America. How do you explain what happened to them? A couple of the quotes I got from people.
They have no idea.
Democrats have lost touch with everyday Americans.
Yes.
Beyonce doesn't pay my bills. Democrats turn their back on us, and if you turn your back on us, eventually we're going to turn our back on you.
This dude's getting
it's a
real.
wake-up call here. That's the feeling in the room for Democrats, as Trump
Respect.
supporters who've been here for now 7-8 hours are awaiting that final moment.
Exactly, dude. People are so over these celebrities. Who cares about these celebrities? Flaunting all the money they have and, this awesome lifestyle, and then thinking that we care about your opinions. Why are your opinions any better than you or me? They're not. I'm just so sick of glorifying these celebrities like they're some gods.
When a call is made and
Sick
they get
of
an
it.
appearance from their political hero, Nora.
Tony DeCopel at the convention center. We should note that the former president has not been there. He has been at his home, which is just right across the bridge, Mar-a-Lago.
What happens to this concept called checks and balances? Because if he gets in, he has the House, possibly the Senate, the Supreme Court. What happens? It seems that he would be in power with no guardrails, so to speak.
We see the senators who are elected tonight. They will owe their success to him.
That's because people voted.
Checks and balances is one question, but you also have, it's not just Donald Trump. There is a political movement now that is that has practiced at supporting whatever his impulses they may send him.
There are some who still see a narrow path for the vice president, and I think it's important to say that there is a narrow path, but it is narrowing by the hour, as Major said earlier.
There are other news organizations that are now awarding this to the former president, and he is set to take the stage here in the coming minutes.
This guy is really sad.
And will address the world and likely declare victory, because it appears to be heading in that direction. What's also happening, though, Republican Senate candidates winning across the Midwest as well. A very good night for Republicans.
All right, we're awaiting former President Trump, as Ed just mentioned, at his West Palm Beach, Florida campaign headquarters. We'll bring that to you when he takes the stage. You're watching CBS News America Decides, Election 2024. We'll be right back.
She's over with this night.
Welcome back to CBS News Election Night headquarters in New York. It is 2 a.m. in the East, 11 p.m. in the West. Former President Donald Trump is having a very big night, and we're waiting to hear from him as he prepares to take the stage at his Florida campaign headquarters.
Why do they need
in the
to tell
Senate,
people
CBS
what
News
time
projects Republicans will take control there, flipping from the Democrats.
CBS political contributor Joel Payne now. Joel?
Hi, Gail.
Hey. So I just want to say, when Jim Clyburn was here earlier this evening, he said that there was still a path, but the path was thorny. I think now we can even see that looks like the thorns are bending to the side as we sit here. When you were here earlier today or yesterday, and now my days are all running together, you said the conversation about black men was being exaggerated, that you didn't think that was the case. Are you still, as you sit here today, an hour ago you had hope? Do you still have hope yourself as you sit here now?
Well, Gail, I got to have hope, but also I got to read polls and data, and the data certainly suggests that things aren't going well. Certainly suggests that things aren't going well. Democrats actually have a chance to win back the House. So it is voters keep firing people. And I think we have to understand why voters keep firing people.
Joel, is it, and I even hate to ask this question, I'm asking as I'm clutching my pearls, could it be a woman issue? When Barack Obama suggested it, people thought, some people were offended that he even raised that issue. But do we have to realistically think about that? This country isn't ready for a woman president?
As you sit here, I'm thinking through what a Trump presidency would mean for the legacy of Joe Biden, what the question is about what the vice president could have done differently to say she was not Joe Biden and actually a change candidate, what she could have articulated. Tell me about some of the missed opportunities that you think are there.
I mean, she just
So I think every defeat, obviously, there are a lot of people that want to start pointing fingers, and I think that's already happening. Yeah.
I apologize. Stand by. CBS News has a new projection for the battleground state of Pennsylvania and its 19 electoral votes. CBS News projects that Donald Trump will be the winner of the state of Pennsylvania.
Can you guys finally admit
that is a state that Biden carried 4 years ago, but Trump won in 2016, a major projection, and that essentially closes the pathway for Kamala Harris and the presidency. Robert Costa.
So much disappointment among my top Democratic sources tonight, just in the last few minutes about Pennsylvania. So much disappointment among my top Democratic sources.
The soul searching and, of course, the questions about strategy that Margaret was just raising. The question about whether Kamala Harris and the Democratic Party made a mistake by not choosing Josh Shapiro as his vice presidential pick for the reasons that Robert just outlined about the inroads that he made. And also, as has been noted, that Vance's vice presidential debate performance probably made a number of Republicans comfortable with the ticket, because remember, there were huge ratings, 50 million people that saw someone that had moderated his message for that national audience.
And just quickly, not to get ahead of it, I know we're still in election 2024, but people close to Josh Shapiro tonight are encouraging him to think about running for president in 2028. There will be a reckoning inside of the Democratic Party should Vice President Harris be defeated tonight. And whether it's Governor Newsom in California or Governor Shapiro, there are already donors in the Democratic Party, strategists trying to think through what
they've got. Miss Kamala, she's a San Francisco bred politician. You couldn't get more left radical than her. She will just do whatever the left mob wants. I mean, the party is just, it's gone off the rails.
Does the future look like?
Interesting, when we started the night, guys, we kept saying it's going to be a long night. We're not going to know anything today. Certainly not Pennsylvania. Now we're sitting here a little after 2 o'clock, and it looks like that this race is over.
And that we were bracing collectively, I think, as a country for Donald Trump to preemptively declare victory. And I don't know that this is so preemptive at this point.
I think there's going to be a lot of sour grapes and people pointing fingers. But when we're looking at this now, this is a multiracial, working class, middle class Republican Party.
God bless you and God bless America. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
In West Palm Beach, talking about unifying the country. We have him 4 electoral votes shy of winning the presidency.
J.D. Vance said it's the greatest political comeback in the history of the United States. Completely.
Let's take a look at Wisconsin as compared to 2020. Look at the map. This is 2024. When I press this button, 2020 president, you are not going to see a huge coloration difference except the shading. Watch the shading. Red areas get a little redder. Blue areas get slightly less blue. What does that mean? That means the intensity of the Trump vote became more apparent, and Harris underperformed as compared to Joe Biden. Again, here's 2024. Here's where we are early this morning. Here's where we were 4 years ago.
And we should also
Biden
point
had
out,
success
we
everywhere.
have not heard anything from any Democrat working on the Harris campaign or at the White House or anywhere else disputing what we're seeing tonight. Nobody has stopped this momentum that is clearly going. There's no question that this is happening. Democrats up and down the ballot understand that what is unfolding is legit. We have not heard from the Harris campaign whether she has made any call to the former president, the president-elect, presume, possibly soon, whether she plans to. We should also note there is nothing on the public schedule at the White House tomorrow for the president, but a national security briefing in the afternoon that now could include all sorts of urgent matters from around the world as allies check in tomorrow.
Joe's going to be napping.
No one in the Democratic Party disputing what's going on tonight.
And it is 3 a.m. in the East, and a very big night for Donald Trump and the Republican Party.
Morning.
Welcome back to CBS News Election 2024. Good morning. It is 3:30 a.m. in the East, 12:30 in the West. We have been on the air for 9 hours straight covering this election, and it has been a very big night for Donald Trump and the Republican Party.
You get paid
This is a post-Roe going away Post the conviction of Donald Trump,
it's almost inexplicable. It's almost inexplicable.
It's inexplicable.
Well, it's going to require
inexplicable.
a lot of, there'd be a really interesting conversation because remember in 2020, the number of women who were turned off by Donald Trump. Yeah. Well, they have in some measure come back. He has done better with them.
So
maybe they learned to look past
what is the lesson, do you think, for the Democratic Party from what happened in 2016 to what is happening today in 2024? I mean, what are the lessons here?
Well, they were identity politics.
Right. Yeah.
We also heard from the Harris campaign, no, you are wrong when you see that the support has tapped out on the issue of the state of democracy. That was something late in the campaign they transitioned back to. That was the closing argument alongside Liz Cheney. So it's like people were just reading completely different signals.
Battleground state.
I love how they closed their
for
campaign
Kamala Harris
with
tonight.
Liz Cheney. So out of touch.
I know. You thinking through them.
No, there is no really good answer for that right now.
Battleground state looks good for Kamala Harris tonight.
There is no really good answer for that right now. I mean, even Michigan, which
awkward,
theoretically looks okay, 66%, 53%, okay. That's sort of in the ballpark. But nothing really looks that great in terms of
that's a lot of red.
The remaining toss-up or lean states. Let's go to Wisconsin. Needs 78%, 62% is our estimate. I mean, it just doesn't look that great. There is no uncalled state that form the backbone of the uncalled battlegrounds that look positive or even slightly positive for the vice president at this hour. The only one that is in that category would be Arizona.
Truly remarkable, what looks like a sweeping victory for Donald Trump.
Pretty dominant.
Certainly he will claim the mandate from
Nobody
the
saw it
results
coming
tonight. We could have some news shortly about whether Donald Trump has officially reached the threshold to be named the next president-elect of the United States. We have not heard from Vice President Kamala Harris.
They don't want to make it
co-chair
official.
spoke to supporters saying go home for the night. And CBS News now projects that Donald Trump is the winner in Wisconsin.
No way.
That gives him the number of electoral votes
She's
he
just blown
needs
away.
to become the 47th president of the United States. This is an incredible moment in American history for Donald Trump, who faced
now
a
they're
number
just,
of
it's setting in hard now.
challenges in this contest. It was an election
Look at her in the
unlike
pink. She
anyone,
is
any of us have ever
miserable.
covered.
A life unlike any we've ever covered. This man, Donald John Trump, born in Jamaica, winning the presidency, as
what?
CBS News projects. This will usher in potentially an unprecedented era in American history, to have someone who believes firmly that he has total presidential power in terms of official acts based on the Supreme Court ruling earlier this year.
Who is
does not
this
have to
guy?
serve in prison despite being convicted in a criminal trial. And despite pressuring his own vice president to overturn an election,
completely flipping on
has
him.
been
Here we
warmly
go.
embraced by the party, the Republican Party once again, and won the presidency based on our CBS News projection. And he is willing and able
Look
and
at
ready
that.
and excited, I'm told, by sources close to him, and including
Beautiful.
by him himself, to return to the White House and wield power on immigration, foreign policy, the economy, the executive branch.
Kamala didn't want power.
Moment in
It's just
history.
Trump, yeah.
Some Americans are very
You kind of
scared,
need power to run
alarmed.
the country, don't you?
They see Donald Trump as a threat, a danger to American democracy.
Donald Trump winning the crucial battlegrounds of Pennsylvania, Georgia, North Carolina, Wisconsin. At this point, 4 of those 7 battlegrounds, and we are still waiting on Arizona, Nevada, and Michigan, but a sweep by Donald Trump, who is also doing well in the popular vote. Behind those numbers, the Vice President Kamala Harris failing to bring together the coalition that normally propels a Democrat into the White House.
That's the one thing Hillary,
so we'll have more
all she
on
could say
that.
in her election
Trump
is that
could
she
win
got the
all
popular
of the 7
vote.
battleground states
Oh, let's
tonight.
get rid of the Electoral College. Yeah.
Well, maybe not could. Maybe not this morning, but yes, he is on pace to win Nevada. He is on pace to win Michigan. Arizona is the only one that still looks theoretically possible for the vice president. But based on the statistics that the data desk has been reviewing, Nevada and Michigan are both leaning very strongly in the former president's direction.
I want to be clear about the timing. He could win them, not necessarily tonight. I'm not sure all those ballots will get counted this evening.
The Trump campaign said for the better part of 2 weeks, the former president has never polled better than he is currently polling. And if he just gets a tick above where he's polling, 48, 49 in all these battleground states, he will win them all. That theory is playing out over and over and over. He was
pretty dominant victory,
and he pulled a little bit more than those polling averages to provide the victory in Wisconsin, Georgia, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, and we've told you Michigan and Nevada are setting up very well for him, and possibly also Arizona as well.
It's an excellent point. Thank you, gentlemen, and Scott MacFarlane. Donald Trump will return to Washington, claiming a mandate with this big win tonight. And he will also have a Republican-controlled Senate that is back in the majority after 4 years, which will allow him to install loyalists throughout the government, even new choices to the Supreme Court if there are retirements, which I think resonated with many of his supporters, that God had chosen him to survive that assassination attempt. And while some people recoiled at him saying that, it was another emotional connection for Donald Trump with his supporters. He has told his supporters, we will fix it. We'll bring in a golden era.
I think we have to all take time to digest this. We're doing it in the moment.
Dude, she's about to cry.
But I don't think we are all quite grasping the gravity of sending Donald Trump back to Washington with the word you used, Nora, a mandate. It's not just the man. It is a mandate. They have
so pathetic how openly biased these people are. It's just like, really? It's just so unprofessional. Well, folks, I hope you got some joy out of the meltdowns as much as I did. Do me a favor, hit the like and subscribe button, and I'll see you on the next one.